Welcome back to the IU427 garage, everybody. Jim's car is up on the lift today. We are diving in deep. We're going to get into the weeds on this car. So hang with us, and I'll bring you right back and kind of give you an overview of what we're working on the car right now and where we're going. All right, first things first, I went to the local auto parts store this morning, and those of you that are building Mk4s probably know this. The brake line material that Factory 5 uses has changed over the years. Most recently, they've gone to this armor-coated brake line, and they give you a collection of straight lengths of the brake line that you basically coupling together with unions and assemble your brake line kit from the back, the front, and everything else. Well, on Jim's car, it was not routed the way that Factory 5 kind of tells you to route it, and so some of the lines were short, one of those in the back, and so wanting to match the type of brake line, like if I was just running all new brake lines in a vehicle, in a car, I've got a 50-foot roll over there, but it's silver. And since they've gone to this armor coated stuff from Factory 5, I'm trying to match what's there. So this morning I picked up a roll at the local auto parts store, and here it is. And I will cut this to length, so if anybody's wondering, this is a 25-foot roll, and the part number is PAC-325, and it's steel line, and then it's just got this poly armor on it. So if you have the tools in order to fabricate the lines yourself, you can just buy a roll of this stuff. Most auto parts store carry this, and if you just need a piece, most of the auto parts stores are carrying straight lengths of this stuff up to, I believe, 72 inches long. I didn't ask when I was there. I know I've got it as long as 60 inches in the past, but I know that they sell it in longer lengths. So I picked that up this morning. But what I've been working on the past 2 nights, and I haven't been recording any of this stuff because some of it's a bit tedious, and I didn't want to break away. My hands were dirty. I didn't want to get grease all over the camera, and excuses, right? But we've been lowering the engine and the transmission. There are some clearance issues on this car with the big block and the stacks, and we are making contact with the frontmost stack on the passenger side of the car. And we dug out 2 engine spacers that someone had made. It looks like these were just made in someone's home shop or garage, and so these were the engine spacers that they made. Now, on the Coyotes and the modular Ford motors, we now Factory 5 provides them, but early on, you could buy spacers from a couple of the vendors, the Factory 5 vendors. And so I don't know if whoever built the car was reading forum posts or on a Facebook page for Factory 5s and saw mention of spacers and decided that his car needed these or what. But they've never been required for a small block Ford or a big block Ford. And so these were part of our issue. The other issue, and I think the second issue, was to solve the first issue. This raised the engine up in the front by because of the way the mounts are. They're at an angle. So even though these spacers are a quarter of an inch, it raised the engine up more than that, because as you're trying to wedge the engine down into the mounts, the spacers push it up even farther than just the quarter inch of the spacers. So to minimize that problem, when I think they noticed that the stacks were hitting, they decided to raise the tail of the transmission up, and that is a full 1.5 inch thick spacer that was under the transmission. Now, I pulled out the spacer that was in there, and right now I've got 2 1/2 inch or two 3/8 spacers, I think. So what's that? A total of 3/4 inch worth of spacer in the back. Just holding the transmission up right now. I don't even have them drilled or bolted in. I've just got the transmission setting down on there. So I will do the same thing on this that we did on the no. We did we do this on the Texas car? I think we did. We had spacers on the Texas car, and we have spacers on the 25th anniversary car. Michael's car had a 4.6, but because we changed that to a TKX transmission, we had to make our own transmission adapter bracket because we didn't get one from Factory 5. We didn't order the TKX transmission from them, and therefore we didn't get that adapter. Now I have an XS one now, but it didn't help us back then. So basically, we're spacing it up in order to get that to kind of bring the front of the engine down with the transmission at rest on just a single spacer. The stack is still, I mean, it's within a hair's distance of contacting the hood, and so if there's any shift in the motor, it's going to hit. And so I figured, well, I'll add another spacer to the back because we're going to have to lengthen this drive shaft. I've looked at the build manual for my original Mark III, and I cannot find a template in there for a big block that is this short for the drive shaft. So I think the drive shaft was just made too short. Regardless, so we're working on those spacers for the transmission, and then while I was back here, I noticed two things. I noticed that the bolts going into the transmission A-frame back here were backwards. They were like this. And I've told you repeatedly in the last couple of videos, always try to run your bolts through from the top down and then put your nut on the bottom. That way, if the nut were ever to come off, the bolt would still be through the hole. And it might rattle, but that would give you time to realize something was wrong. The front ones were right. They come in from the top, out of the bottom, and they've got nuts on them. Nylon lock nuts, so they're good. So I'm going to finish getting this one flipped over, and as I'm doing it, I went ahead, I grabbed the drill, and I'm just clearancing the holes so that the bolts drop in there nice. And then the other thing that I'm going to do is right here, the emergency brake is contacting this bolt, this nut. I don't know, can you see that? There's a nut right there. And so I'm just going to take that, that's a carriage bolt, and it's sent in from the top. Now, this is one exception to that rule of always bringing the bolt in from the top. This will not pass by that head of the bolt, or in this case, the nut. So you got to pull the brake, and it just catches. So we're going to turn that over, and we're going to have the carriage bolt in from the bottom, so the flat side is on the bottom, and hopefully that will take care of any issues with the emergency brake. But I'm guessing it doesn't work really well, seeing how that bolt is in the way, or that nut. So we're going to turn that around and see if we can get some clearance there too. While I'm down here, I'm just trying to take care of all the little things that I find. I think we're going to go ahead and we're going to redo the fuel line here. I'm not happy with the connection that is right here and how it goes up and over the 4-inch round tube. So I think we're going to do something with that. I do have some of that tubing here, which matches what the Factory 5 stuff is, and I'm not happy with the way it goes into the fuel pump here in the front. So we've got a bunch of stuff we're going to do in the front. To the motor, we're going to drop the pan, we're going to replace the pan gasket. I don't think I've shown this before, but you can see all the silicone. And that's just regular, clear silicone sealant someone used. It looks like in place of a gasket. I can't imagine there's a gasket in there too, but I guess we'll find out when we pull it apart. And I think I'm going to have to do some creative rerouting of our new clutch cable, because it just doesn't seem like it's going to work where it is. So I may end up drilling a hole through the engine mount right up in here. I can't hold a flashlight and the camera at the same time and point, so you guys are going to have to trust me. I think I'm going to drill a hole through there with a hole saw and put a bushing in there. And that will allow us to get some more length out of the clutch cable. But for right now, I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to put the camera down. I'm going to get back to work on the bolts underneath there, get those moved around, and then I'll bring you guys back. Now, I did have to take the side pipes off of the car because I lifted the engine one side at a time. And when you do that, if you lift either side, or both sides at the same time, you just run out of body clearance around the side pipes. So the side pipes had to come off, and then I may leave them off for the short term, but we did level the engine as well. So we should have better side pipe clearance to the ground, even though we lowered the motor, because one side was high and one side was low before, and so we should have evened those out just a little bit, but we'll see. So I'll bring you guys back when I got a little bit more to show you. All right, everybody, next day, we have got the drive shaft out of Jim's car. Let me see if I can get some light. There we go. We've got the drive shaft out of Jim's car. I went ahead and I changed out a bolt. I don't know if I showed this last night. The bolt that goes from the banana bracket for the 3-link to the differential, one was too short, and two was the wrong size. It was 3/8 bolt running down through there, but the actual hole inside the banana bracket is a 7/16 hole. So we always like to make those 7/16 so there's no movement inside, and you drill the hole and it's straight. And so I changed out that bolt. I got that in. You can see it right here. So that's this one right here. And now the bolt projects down far enough. I went ahead and put a washer on here just because. And then, of course, it's got a nylock nut on it. So that's all done. The drive shaft is out. And I think what the deal is, the dealio, is I held on all these years to my Mk4 assembly manual. And I don't often get into the indexes, appendix part of any of the build manuals anymore, because I've done so many of these, and normally we just order a drive shaft with the kit. However, it appears as though this drive shaft the previous owner had made. And I think he misread the specs. So I'm going to turn the camera around and I'm going to show you the specs. Because the drive shaft is almost a full 1 inch short. So if you look here, it says 93 and earlier Ford engine using a T5 or a TKO transmission. You need the drive shaft at 11 inches. And that is from the front of the yoke to the flat portion of the drive shaft flange. This is the flange that goes on to the pinion. And that's the overall length. Problem is, I measured ours, and ours is at 10 3/8. And that is only for a 302, not any Ford engine like the above one. A 302 using a 94 and 95 bell housing and T5 transmission. No mention of TKO transmission there, and ours is in fact a TKO. So our drive shaft is almost a full inch short. And so what that does is it just doesn't allow us enough engagement from the yoke into the back of the transmission. And I'm not comfortable with that. So I've got the drive shaft over here in the back of the work truck. I'm going to take this, if I have time tomorrow. Today's Thursday, so if I don't have time tomorrow, I'll have to wait until next week. But I have the drive shaft right here. And see if I see here. I have it marked right here. And that's how far the seal, I marked it at the seal. And our seal is not an internal seal, it's the external seal that bellows out. And so this is our total insertion into the back of the transmission from here to here. Now, it doesn't start hitting the actual splines of the output shaft until right about here. So this is the only engagement we had into the back of the transmission. And no, that's not going to work. So I'm going to take this in tomorrow. I'm going to have the drive shaft shop cut this portion out. They'll make a longer center section here. They'll re-weld it, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to have them balance this so that it'll be all good from here on out. And that's what I'm working on this evening. Since I've got that out, I think I will just go ahead and start working on this brake line that's in the back here. I'm going to at least try to get that brake line out of the car, and then get a length so I can take the coil that I bought, the 25-foot coil, and at least get it cut to length tonight. And then hopefully tomorrow I can get that bent, flared, and then put back in place and clean up the back of this car. And then the back of the car minus the drive shaft should be pretty much done. The only other thing that we're going to talk about with Jim is some of the fuel system stuff. But I think I'm going to try to eliminate the fuel filter that's back near the tank in the car, because it just makes it harder with a mechanical fuel pump to pull that fuel all the way to the front through a filter at the back of the car. So there's already a sock on the end of the pickup tube, and so I think we'd be better served by putting a fuel filter under the hood after the fuel pump, because it's far easier to push the fuel through a filter than to pull it through a fuel filter. So I will catch up with you guys as soon as I've got something else to show you. All right, I don't even know what day it is anymore, everybody. Still working on Jim's car. I know it's at least 2 days later. I've just been coming out to the shop each night and kind of just trying to keep forward momentum going on it. So if I'm in a particular area, I'm just trying to finish up as much stuff in that area as I could. So I'm going to raise the car up, but first I wanted to obviously show you the most visible part of the car that's changed, and that is the roll bar is out. Jim ordered a chrome roll bar to replace the black powder coated roll bar that was previously in the car. And when I pulled the roll bar out, I didn't see any visible hardware on this rear link, which isn't a huge deal, because a lot of times we'll find my buddy Greg, who owns 520 Speedworks, he makes a boltless attachment for this rear leg. And so I just figured, oh, well, it's got the boltless bracket or assembly in there. Well, when I went to pull it apart, there was nothing. I mean, it's just like that. so I can't tell. I'm going to have to lay the brand new chrome one next to this one and then measure the overall height from the top of the loop down to the legs. But it appears to me as though this roll bar was cut at the bottom. And usually you can get away with about an inch to an inch and a half of cut in the roll bar and still get that rear leg to slide in. It's not easy, but you can get it to go in without too much trouble. The problem is as you're putting it together, the rear leg goes in first, and then you have to lower the roll bar hoop down and line the rear leg up with it as you're sliding it in. With the roll bar at full length as supplied, you still put the rear leg in first, but there's room to drop that roll bar hoop all the way in and then slide the rear leg into it. You don't have to kind of line them up as you're dropping it in. So since they were so close as I was pulling the roll bar apart, it just appears to me that the roll bar was cut, which is fine because the roll bar sticks up really high in these cars. Because as they went into production on the Mark IV, they changed the way the rear of the body sits on the chassis, so that the ass end of the car is actually lower than on a previous generation car, the Mark IIIs and before. They changed the trunk deck lid and stuff like that, but essentially the body didn't change a whole lot other than the fact that the rear of the car is lower, so it covers the gas tank. So you don't see that perky butt from the rear where the gas tank hangs down. That's the most significant change to the Mark IVs. So when they did that, the roll bar ended up sticking, it looks like it's sticking way higher up than on a Mark III or a Mark II or a Mark I. And so it helps for the overall look of the car to lower the roll bar down just a little bit. We did that on the silver car. On Ed's car, we actually lowered his down 2.5 inches. But we had to make an offset bracket for that rear leg, and the cutout in the body changed too. So that's a pretty, that's a pretty good undertaking if you want to do something like that. And then again, if you're a taller guy like me, then your head is, even with the roll bar. And so, I'm not going to get in the whole safety thing. But for the overall look of the car, the roll bar lower just looks nicer to me. So we've got the roll bar out. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to see if I can measure for the seat belts and then try to get those in. So I'll bring you back in a little while. All right, so here again, you can see we just went ahead and we left the grommets in on the top of the body because these look like they are the ones that came from Factory 5 and they bolt in. So they have machine screws with nylon lock nuts. Honestly, they're just a royal pain in the neck. But if I were to have put these in, I would have thrown those machine screws away. Well, I probably would have saved them for something else, but regardless. And then I would have gone with just some stainless sheet metal screws up in there, down from the top through the fiberglass. Generally, we just pre-drill those. And then we install them like, the ones that we get from Mike Everson. Because there's no need for a bolt and a nut on these when a sheet metal screw will hold it in the fiberglass, no problem. But we got the stub there. It looks like, thank God that the previous owner did put some, looks like axle grease on the stub. So the roll bar actually came out fairly easy. After we got the bolt pulled out, it slid right out. And of course, then we had to, take the wheel off in order to get under here. But I was already under here because I had been working on the brake line. The brake line is done under there. I will go ahead, lift the rest of the way up, and then I will give you guys a peek at how the brake line turned out and then what else transpired while we were under the back of the car. All right, so with the lift up in the air, you can see that we went ahead and we tied in the brake line to the old T-fitting. And then rather than just running it straight, we put an offset in it and then ran it along the top of the frame rail here with a couple of cushion clips. And then it goes, let's see if I can get you in there. It's kind of tough to see right here. It goes across the top rail over to the other side, and you're getting a little sneak peek of the new fuel line in there. And then it goes around here. And then right at the end, we have a loop in it to get it to go straight into our fuel adapter bracket that takes us into the AN3 line that goes to the brake caliper. So that's all in. I've strapped it in a number of places. See if we can get you up there. So there's a strap right there. We've got a double strap over here for the fuel line and the brake line. I can't get up high enough in there to see if I'm actually focusing on anything for you. But then while we were back here, I took a good hard look at the way the fuel line and the fuel system was done in the back here. And I just thought to myself that we could do better, if not for looks, then for actual flow of fuel, because it just, it reduced in size from 3/8 to 5/16. And I just think for the big block we need more. So I went ahead, the existing fitting on this side was 3/8, but it had 5/16 hose stretched over it. We went ahead, we replaced that with some push lock fuel hose. So this is flame resistant Goodyear fuel hose. And I know you don't need a clamp on push lock, but I figure it's better to have, you know, an extra layer of security there. And this is low pressure. This is, you know, probably it's only retrieving fuel from the tank at about 7 psi. But you know, if anybody ever wanted to upgrade later, then, you know, the fuel line is good for, you know, 100 psi now. Actually, this hose is good for 200. So we've got it strapped right there. And then at the tank, what I ended up doing is I ended up using some fuel lines and fittings that I had here in the shop. The car was using the Factory 5 in-tank pickup. So it goes in just like you would a standard EFI fuel pump hanger, but it just has, it's not even a sock. It's almost like a little mesh cylindrical screen that goes on the end of it. And then it has another tube that comes up out of it because, of course, it's just modeled after the EFI one. And we put a vacuum cap on that to seal it off. But it's set up to use, you know, a push-on style Ford fitting. And so I can show you what we use because we've got a similar one here on the engine for Ellie. But essentially, it's just one of these type of connectors that go on the fuel rail here. So the fuel line has this ridge on it, and then this fitting goes over it with a couple of O-rings, and then there's a threaded portion back here that threads into the fitting. And so we use that to adapt it to AN6, and then I went ahead and I had some different color. I think they were the red and blue AN style fittings, but I had a 45-degree push lock to AN6. And so that took us kind of around to get us headed right towards that fuel line up above the tire. And so I wanted to make sure that we weren't, you know, kinking that rubber hose, and I wanted as straight a shot as possible. And even though we added an extra fitting there, I feel more confident about that extra fitting than having that fuel line kinked. So we eliminated the stock style EFI fuel filter that was back there, and what we're going to end up doing is I've got to redo the front fuel line from about here. So right about here it transitions from steel to aluminum fuel line, and it goes up and around and down and over, and it's just it wasn't, I don't think it was thought out. I think it was a kind of bend as you go type of thing, rather than looking at the overall picture. I don't know if it was put in before the engine got dropped in or after. Regardless, we're going to run it straight along the 4-inch tube all the way out to this 4-inch cross tube, and that's when we'll go over the top of the 4-inch round tube and send it towards the mechanical fuel pump on the other side, and just try to clean it up, because it's run poorly. It runs dangerously close to the positive stud on the starter. This engine has a gear reduction starter, kind of like the later model, you know, like the 94 and up Mustangs. And so it has a solenoid built onto the high torque starter, and that fuel line is only about an inch from there, and it would probably be fine. But on the other side of the car, where it comes up into the fuel pump, there's a kink in the line, so it's not getting full fuel flow anyway. And somewhere in there, we've got to put an inline fuel filter now. So I'm going to redo that line. I'm going to redo the rubber lines on the other side of the car. And so I just wanted to get all that taken care of at the back of the car now, since I had my head up in there and I was back there doing stuff anyways. We're going to continue work on Jim's car, but I think I'm going to transition to a couple of easily attainable goals in the next couple of days. I think I'm going to concentrate on getting the trunk struts in, because just working inside the trunk the last couple of days and having to put the prop rod in there, and I knocked the prop rod loose once already and knocked myself in the head with both the prop rod and the trunk. I think I'm going to get the trunk struts mounted so that the trunk will hold itself open. And we're going to be using Mark III trunk struts in this from Mike Everson rather than the Mark IV, because in a completed car, they're easier to install. And then one thing I didn't show you is we did pull out the battery. So I think we're going to go with the Breeze front mount battery. So if anybody's looking for an Optima battery, this one is brand new. It was put in looks like November of 2021. And so, brand new battery. The battery even has the original tag on it of 1021. So the battery was in production in, what is that? Is that October 11? Right? October, November, December, yeah. So it's essentially a brand new battery. I don't know, what group size is it? I don't got a group size. I just have a part number. But I guess, you know, you can look it up by part number. It's an SC34U. So it must be a 34, group 34 battery. I don't know what that translates to. Anyway, so we pulled that out. We're going to go with a Breeze front mount battery for this. Now, on Mark's website, on the Breeze website, it says not for big blocks. But that note is under a Mark III. And I think the reasoning for that is on the Mark III's, his battery box sits higher in the front of the car, meaning you have to put it on top of the 4-inch bar rather than in between the 4-inch round tube and the cross brace. On the Mark IV, it fits down lower, and I think the battery will fit. I don't think it's a matter of compression or anything like that, because we put one of these in the Texas car, Ed and Kathy's Texas car, and that was a high compression 427 Windsor, and it had no problem starting it. We did not buy the most expensive battery. We basically just bought, it's a tractor battery. We just bought the standard tractor battery for what Mark says is the group size that needs to go in there. And I think there was 1 or 2 upgrades. I could have got a higher cold cranking amp. And rather than doing that, we just wanted to get the car running and driving and all that kind of stuff. And so we figured, well, we'll just go with a cheap one, and it'll last as long as it lasts. So we can go with a higher capacity battery in the same basic size for this if we have to, and we may. Anyways, so that'll get you caught up to today. As I said, I'm going to continue working on Jim's car over the next probably 2 weeks, and I'm going to try to get as far along as I can. So I'm just looking for small wins at this point. We did get some parts for it, so I do have the roll bar. I do have a new pan gasket. I have the oil filter adapter. We're going to get rid of the remote oil filter, and we're going to put the oil filter on the side of the block where it belongs. And what else do we got over there? We've got some parts from Breeze, but we also waiting for parts from Breeze. So, seatbelts. I've got a 5-point harness for both sides of the car, driver and passenger. So those can go in the car too. So there's a bunch of stuff I'm going to be working on. I think I'm just going to be working on some of those easy win items the next couple of days, because I haven't been showing a lot of progress on this. Even though we've been putting in a lot of hours on the car, all this stuff in the back is just time consuming. So, again, I'm rambling on. I'll see you guys all next time. If you're enjoying the content, please do the like, the share, the subscribe, all that good stuff. We'll see you next time. Have a great day.